Hello everyone and welcome to the very much awaited favorite black metal albums video. Now I did have this narrowed down to 10 with a whole bunch of honorable mentions, but my number 10 spot ended up being a hard pick, so I decided to just strip that completely. Now these three albums you have in front of you, in case you couldn't tell, that's the legendary anthems to the Working at Dusk. We will get to that one soon. But one of these three is not in the video. And you'll find out pretty much right now which of those three it is. So we got 11 honorable mentions, so technically this is a top 20 video. And again, these 11 are just rough picks. There's probably someone I could interchange with others, which are not even going to get mentioned. But this list is just the first 20 that came to mind. Now 9 through to number 1 is ordered. So we shall get right into it. So we have 11 honorable mentions, as I just said. Some of these are going to raise some eyebrows, and maybe even get me a few salty comments for 2 or 3 bands in particular. And some of you guys are going to dump yourself at what number 3 is, let me tell you. So, first honorable mention is the legendary Storm of the Light's Bane. When I was writing up this list, I had so many people ask me if this would make it, and it's pretty damn close. If I did expand this to a legitimate top 20, this would be number 15. Now, Storm of the Light's Bane, it's got this mellow death kind of underbite to it. Dissection, of course, being from Sweden, which is where a whole bunch of golden mellow death was coming out at the same time as that. Hell, it came out the same year as Slaughter of the Soul, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, most of these tracks are pretty lengthy, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, and they use that to their full advantage. Every track is pummeling when it needs to be, and groovy and riffy when it needs to be. The inclusion of keyboards and acoustic guitars is done to perfection, and even right down to the amazing artwork, everything about this just screams classic. Speaking of classic, we got the one and only Paracletus by Deathsmeller Omega. At the time, Deathsmeller Omega were flirting with this sound of using like very gore-gutsy type death metal, but through a black metal lens. They of course released Fast Ite before this, which is a great album, but then you get to Paracletus, and that is the sound of avant-garde black metal. This album may only be, 13 or 14 years old, but it's already an absolute classic of the genre, which, it just beats you down for 42 minutes straight. And the track Wings of Predation, which I think is track 2 or 3, is hands down one of my favorite black metal tracks of all time. I could never get sick of it. Okay, next up is Cruelty and the Beast by Cradle of Filth. I know a lot of people hate this one. Get over yourselves. Please. Saying that they're not black metal, they're just dark and edgy goth metal band. No. They are a black metal band, okay guys? That's for you. But yeah, it's really grand and theatrical. The inclusion of keyboards, strings, woodwind instruments, and brass instruments is done excellently. And even though I'm actually very new to Cradle of Filth, Danny Filth is hands down one of my favorite black metal vocalists. He just goes so unbelievably hard on every single track. Okay, next up is another one which is going to raise some eyebrows, 2 in a row which might raise some eyebrows. False Light by White Ward. This only came out last year, but this is one of the most unique releases in the genre I've ever heard. Fusing black metal with their love of post-metal and black gaze a little bit, I guess. Jazz, death metal elements, there's even like some metalcore bits in here, and it all blends together absolutely wonderfully. The opening track, Leviathan, is an almost 14-minute beast of a track. I adore pretty much every fleeting second of that song. And the giant instrumental section in the middle is just so impressive. And the drum performance on here is just inhuman. Next up is one of 2 2023 releases. If you've been talking to me a lot about 2023 releases, you know exactly what the other one, which made this list will be. We got 93696 by Liturgy. A lot of people hate Liturgy, and honestly that's kind of understandable. For most people, they're just too weird and very pretentious to most people. Me included. I think they're very pretentious as well, a lot of the time. I actually started with this one, and it absolutely blew my mind. Pretty much every single track is just so abrasive and long. All the different blending influences is done extremely well. Now, based off how much I liked this album, I went back to Aesthetica and was not that big on it. Then I listened to Hark, which I thought was really good. Then I listened to Origin of the Alimonies, and it bored me to death. It was chaotic and weird to a point that not even I liked it. Which is saying a lot of some of the stuff I listened to. Then I listened to 93696 again, and oh my god, I knew I had to put it here. Because even though I've listened to it only twice, it's already one of my all-time favorites, as you can see here. Next up is Bloodfire Death by Bathory, which is another one I almost squeaked into my list. It's an absolute classic. Came out back in 1987, 8 or 9, something like that. And this was pretty much the foundation for second wave black metal, alongside releases like, Death Crush by Mayhem and blah blah blah. But this was the start of their Viking era. And wow, a lot of these tracks are pretty lengthy as well, including the title track, which is one of the longest songs Bathory's ever done, and it's probably my favorite Bathory song, honestly. That driving melody that they keep on going back to is just delicious. Absolutely all wonderful stuff. Okay, another modern classic, The Satanist by Behemoth. Nergal was battling cancer at this point, and had to go through so many frightening medical procedures. And his anger and sadness was channeled wonderfully here. Every single track is just so genuine feeling, and you can feel the anger bleeding through the music, and channeled it into one of the best black metal albums of the 2010s, hands down. Okay, next up is Arntor by Windir. This in comparison to 1184 in comparison to this is just severely lacking. Now, 1184 is really good too, but Arntor is its own beast. The opening track is a wonderful 3.5-minute instrumental, which wouldn't be too far removed from, I don't know, Skyrim or Dark Souls music, It's got that same kind of very medieval feeling, I guess you could say. And yeah, straight after that you get the Arntor song, which is fantastic. All the different movements it goes through. The Struggle is hands down my favorite Windir song. It just has that nice slow groove, and then it really explodes towards the end. It's got one other song which I'm blanking on the name of. I'll probably put it up there, or way over there in the corner, so you can actually see it around this giant wall of text. But yeah, Arntor is hands down my favorite by Windir. It's not even close. Next up is Puritanical something by Dimmu Borgir, who are in that same camp of Cradle of Filth, kind of being a band who gets hated for no reason as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, Puritanical blah 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 is one of the more creative black metal albums I've ever heard. First of all, it's got this really harsh and gritty metallic sounding production, for lack of a better word. It's just so soaked in reverb and static. And the guitar tone is absolutely monstrous on this thing. Oh my god. And once again, it blends all these influences from classical and jazz, I guess you could argue. It's even got a bit of death metal spice to it. And yeah, this is an absolute head scratcher from front to back, and it's wonderful to say the least. Next up, we got one of the more challenging releases here. We got 5 Havi Teti by Moonsorrow. This album is only 2 tracks. The first one goes for 30 minutes, and the second one goes for 26 minutes. Yeah! So, this is one you gotta, of course, set a lot of time aside for, but it's worth it. The first track is just unbelievably grand sounding and massive. It literally feels like, I don't know, a bunch of people who are about to go off to war. It just has that super grand feeling. These guys are from Finland, and they even inject a whole bunch of like European folk instrumentation into it, and it's absolutely wonderful. The first track is probably my favorite Moonstone track ever, and I just can't tire of it. The second track is really good too, but like it just doesn't quite hold up to that first track for me, at least. Okay, the last honorable mention is one I actually initially did have a number 10, but then kind of chucked it out at the last minute because I gave it a second listen, and I was like, it's really, really good, but like, do I want to stack it up to the other ones? Because this is another very challenging listen, because it's only 7 tracks, but it goes for an hour and 27 minutes. You do the math, these are some extremely long songs. It may be only 7 tracks, and all of them except for one are well over 10 minutes. The first track sets the pace very well. It's very long, of course. It's like 12, 13, 14 minutes. And it has this really excellent big build. And you're just sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting before it gets into an absolute flurry of traditional sounding black metal. The second track, The Veiled Garden, is... oh my god. First things first, it's the longest track. So it has so much time to... so much time to breathe. So much time to shock you with all these interesting twists and turns. And once again, it takes a really long time to build. Once it does build, though, it is so worth it. And it has this big, chill but creepy section in the middle, which is just absolutely amazing. There's one track which I'm blanking on the name of. It's like, once again, it's really long, 11 or 12 minutes, and it's just this really quiet and calm, jammy instrumental. There's barely any distorted guitars in it at all. And yeah, it's mostly really quiet. And that's one of the standout tracks here, because, again, it's kind of out of place with the other tracks, but it manages to fit in very well. Okay, on to the top 9. Number 9 is an absolute classic, which I toyed with putting a bit higher. It's At the Heart of Winter by Immortal. If this is only number 9, given how much I love this one, as you guys over on Discord will know, it shows you just how strong I think the rest of this list is. Instantly opening with Stand the Fall of Time, which might be my favorite Immortal track. This particular album's got this really weird sound to it. It's proggy, it's huge sounding, even by their standards. And for the most part, it doesn't really have their normal goofy, kind of fun sound. It's just so unbelievably massive sounding, as I said a few seconds ago. All the little twists and turns keep you on your toes and shock your senses. It has the more slow groovy parts and mid-tempo parts, and absolutely furious second wave Norwegian black metal sections. Solarfall, now that's probably my favorite Immortal track. That quiet acoustic middle section is my favorite part of their entire discography. It's just so scary. So scary. And the drum pattern there is just amazing. And the outro as well. So good. The title track, while it does take a bit too long to get started, in my opinion, it's also a really good track. And the other tracks don't quite grab me as much as the others. But overall, this is an absolute classic of the black metal genre for a reason. And the artwork, if I ever do a video of my favorite artworks of all time, this is absolutely making it on there. Okay, number 8, Blood on Our Wells by Druid. You guys knew this would be here. Blood on Our Wells, hey? Wow. First things first, another amazing artwork. And this is another one which takes advantage of long songs but a short track list. Because this is, I think, 6 or 7 tracks, but goes for about 51 minutes. Once again, these are some long tracks, and you really need to sink your teeth into them and listen to this album over and over and over. I've listened to this maybe 5, 6, 7 times now, and it just keeps getting better and better. The first track I'm not biggest fan of, which was kind of intentional on their part because it's just supposed to be, an interlude-ish kind of part, which bleeds straight into Forest for Gods. I'll put it there. Um, that's a really great track, but doesn't quite grab me like the others do. But then, one of my favorite black metal songs ever, When the Flame Turns to Ashes. Wow. Wow. And wow. The very repetitive nature of it really drills the melodies into your head. And just when you start to get tired of the verse, they switch it up. Then they get back to the verse. They switch it up for a little bit to the same part as before. Go back to the verse, to that section again, to the verse, and then it drops out into the acoustic bit. I could talk for ages about that song. I'm going to do an episode of Ben's favorites on that for sure. That's going to be one of my next Ben's favorites as well. And then Solitude is the next track. That's a much faster track to give you a bit of a break from the slower kind of track. I'm pretty sure it's the longest track on the album. And once again, it's got that kind of repetitive sound to it to really drill the melodies into your head. I'm not the biggest fan of super repetitive black metal, but Druids do it so well because of all the different layers and stuff that they throw in. I'm blanking on the other two tracks for the second. But then it ends on Ukrainian Insurgent Army? Oof. That's such a pretty track. It ends this album wonderfully. Okay. Much like Liturgy, White Ward, and Dimmu and Cradle, this is another one which might raise some eyebrows. And again into the lap by Panopticon. A lot of you people in the Discord call him, Mid-Opticon. Well, that's your loss. When you have straight up masterpieces like this album. This is one of the first black metal albums I ever enjoyed. Because I'll say my spiel later about how my journey into black metal is a bit rough. But yeah, this one was a different approach to what I'd seen. Austin Lund, of course, is American and eventually learned the banjo after playing guitar, bass, drums, and vocals for a really long time. And started blending it about the time of Kentucky. Kentucky has way too much of that bluegrassy country kind of sound for me, which weighs it down a lot. But here, it's used very sparingly and quite rarely. And this is another one kind of like The Satanist, where Lund was going through some stuff, man. He was feeling very mentally down from COVID and blah, blah, blah. And channeled it wonderfully here. The opening track, which is the title track, is a very soft and sad song, which acts as a really great visual for the album, because the whole thing is just got this really depressing and dark feel to it. Next up is Dead Loons, I think, which, much like the title track to At the Heart of Winter, takes way too long to get going. It's the same melody over and over and over for like 5 minutes. You do not need to do that, but as soon as the track gets going, the remaining you can see my hand in the mirror. The remaining 4 or 5 minutes is just wonderful. Rope Burn Exit is another beautiful but crushing song. And then Moth Eaten Soul comes on. I've talked at length in the Discord and my Panopticon ranking, which is the only one on YouTube, by the way. I was the first ever person to do that, and still the only one. Is, without a doubt, one of my favorite songs ever made. Most Panopticon songs have that a dark and gloomy kind of feeling, but there's like a slight glimmer of hope. Moth Eaten Soul, none of that. Throw it in the bin, because that's not true cult. And the last two tracks are both very long and have that wrapping up kind of feeling to them. And the final track in particular has just got this beautiful fade out to it. And yeah, this is hands down my favorite by Panopticon, but Race to the North is a pretty close second. Especially when you have songs like Where Mountains Pierce the Sky and Chase the Grain. And the disharmonium of Evening Song Part 2, whatever that song's called. It's a long title. But yeah, this is one of the first things that made me appreciate black metal. So, it kind of has a special place in my heart for that, and I never tire of it. Okay, next up is another absolute classic, Anthems to the Welkin of Duskpate Emperor. A lot of people prefer Nightside, 100% fair enough, but for me, Anthems is just better by that much. The difference between Anthems and Nightside for me is literally that and that. You can go either way, really. This one, much like I said in my Agalog Emperor and Mutilation ranking, to me, it took Nightside, made it more chaotic, the production is better, there's a bit less reverb, so it's a fair bit clearer. The arrangements got more impressive, the musicianship got even tighter, the drum performance on here is utterly inhuman, and they just refined on it a tiny bit, mind you, from Nightside in pretty much every single way. I actually saw Emperor a couple of weeks ago. They played Nightside in full, that was wonderful, and then they played like half of Anthems. And I ate up every moment of it. I might even insert a couple of photos here. And... But yeah, Anthems is absolutely mind-melting from front to back. And much like Nightside, they take advantage of long songs. 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. And it works absolutely wonderfully. Every single song is unbelievably dense and triumphant sounding. There's a lot more sung vocals as opposed to scream vocals on this one in comparison to Nightside as well. So it gives it a bunch of beautiful dynamics. And track 2, Yin Treads Imperium, is hands down my favorite Emperor track. As soon as they busted that song out the other week when I saw them, I was like, alright boys, I need to get to the pit. And just moshed like an absolute madman for the entire 6 minutes. Okay, next up is an album that came out 3 weeks ago. Let that sink in. 3 weeks ago. And I'm already putting it above these absolute classics. We have Astral Constellations of the Magical Zodiac, I think that's the correct title, by Aesop Trillium. I can't believe... I can't believe what I'm listening to every single time with this album. It's so grand, symphonic and bombastic. So ambitious. So intelligent and creative. And even though it runs for 2 hours and 10 minutes, I've already listened to this album 3 times and still can't get enough of it. And it came out 3 weeks ago. Oh. So it's 14 tracks, 2 hours and 10 minutes. Every single track except for the last 2 is like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes long, but they fly by. The last 2 tracks both go for 21 minutes, and they also fly by. I was actually listening to the second last track. In fact, I think I still have it open somewhere. Yeah. I was listening to that while I was finalizing these slides. And by the time I paused it, I was like, what? 17 minutes have flown by already? I can't believe that. And yeah, it is hands down my album of the year so far. I honestly don't see anything changing that. And it's already my 5th favorite black metal album of all time. Big words for something that came out, again, not even 3 weeks ago. Next up is A Blaze in the Northern Sky by Darkthrone. Every single track, I was saying this in the Discord a few days ago, over at Questies, this doesn't even feel like Darkthrone. Every single track is so cleverly written, and flows from the next part to the next so seamlessly. And starting off with the 11-minute Catharian Life Code, this is a wildly different Darkthrone. They would record Soulside Journey and the rest of the Unholy Trinity. A lot of people think the Transylvanian Hunger is better than this. And honestly, I don't understand that in the slightest. Sure, opinions are opinions, blah blah blah. I don't understand that at all. When you have this come out before it. There is, of course, Catharian Life Code, as I explained before, which a lot of it is very slow and groovy and heavy. And then it just slams you in the face right when you least expect. Uh, In the Shadow of the Horns is another absolute classic of Dark Throne, and once again, it's a song that's mostly kind of slow, and has this like blues rock kind of edge to it. But then in the second half, they panic. It has Paragon like Belial, which is hands down my favorite Dark Throne song of all time. The way that that song flows and is constructed is literally just like a prog metal song, pretty much. And I love that. If you think I'm talking out of my ass and saying that it sounds like prog metal, listen to it again. You might understand where I'm coming from. Um, the title track is amazing. Where Cold Winds Blow is amazing. It's just a stone cold classic, which people will talk about as long as this genre is alive. And coming in at number 3, Sunbather by Deaf Heaven. Oh, people are going to be mad. And I don't care. I adore this album to no end. And whenever people say it's trash, or they're a hipster band, or a band that posers listens to, and people who don't understand black metal correctly, I just turn it up louder. um, every single track, with the exception of Windows, I hate that track, is so energetic, so smartly written. It's heavy when it needs to be, it's soft and calming when it needs to be, it's beautiful when it needs to be, and it's dark and so heavy at times. A lot of people say that this album is not dark at all, and it's just bright and cheery post-rock with a little bit of black metal in it, because again, they're hipsters and posers. But no, if you really do some digging, there are some legitimately dark sections in here. The middle of the title track comes into play, for example, but right before it goes cheery and happy again, because that's what Deaf Heaven do, and they do it so well. The peak entry is a wonderful closer. It's about 12 minutes long, and they take full advantage of that. It even has this really beautiful post-rockish section in the middle, and the climax that comes in at about the 8-minute mark. Oh my god. That beautiful guitar melody, and then the vocals coming back in for a bit. They even recorded what sounds like a real piano for that bit to layer it over the top. And yeah, much like what's it called, And Again Into the Light, this is another album that kind of grabbed me when I was still trying to get myself into black metal. Because I heard for so long that this is so hated, and they're posers, and blah, 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 blah. But I checked this out, and I was like, why do people hate this? This is amazing. And such a fresh and new approach. This album is actually turning 10 in 10 days, funnily enough. And you can bet that yours truly is going to spin it. I didn't even get into the other tracks that I love, because it's all of them mixed with the exception of Windows. Dreamhouse, which I'm going to be seeing live tonight because they play it every single day. Please Remember was a song that, much like Windows, I used to hate, but it grew on me over time. Granted, it's got about a minute and a half of feedback. No one needs to listen to that. No one. Every time it gets to that bit, I'm like, oh crap. Better drag my saliva because this is painful. But then after that, it's this beautiful shoegaze song. And yeah, it's Sunbather by Deaf Heaven. If it wasn't for Windows, I could honestly shoot this to number 2, which is the one and only Frost by Enslaved. This is the album that made me understand black metal completely. And Enslaved definitely get mad respect for that. Back about May last year, I was like, okay, I'm getting into black metal. I listened to all of the absolute classic bands and albums. Blazing the Northern Sky, I thought it was trash, but now I love it, of course, thanks to Frost. I tried Dissection Storm of the Light's Bane. I was like, okay, this is pretty good. I tried The Mantle by Agalloch, which we'll get to in a second. I wasn't that big on it at the time. I tried the rest of the Unholy Trinity by Dark Throne and thought it and found them miserable. Emperor's Classic 2, which I of course also now love. At the Heart of Winter, which I actually loved right from the start. I tried early Bathory, which wasn't really clicking with me either. And Burzum, which I'm still not the biggest fan of at all at this point. I tried everything under the sun, pretty much, that people start black metal off with. But then, tried Frost, and by track 2, Loke, which is still one of my favorite Enslaved songs, my mind was changed. This was again a very new and intellectual approach to black metal, which I was kind of missing from those other bands in comparison. I'm of course not trying to talk down on their musical ability at all or anything, but you get what I mean. It was a slightly different musical approach. And it really caught my ear. And by the time I was done with this album, I was just absolutely blown away at what Enslaved had to offer here. I of course have the t-shirt now, and Enslaved is still my favorite black metal band. They've Panopticon and Darkthrone are very close behind them. And every time I listen to Frost, it just gets wedged deeper and deeper into my brain. And it was pretty much a no-brainer to put this higher than number 5. When you have tracks like the title track, the really creepy keyboardy instrumental, which I might try and do a cover of at some point. Use this as an interlude for my next album or something. The aforementioned Loke, Fenris, Yggdrasil. There's one other track which I'm blanking on the name of, which I put there as normal. Yeah, it's a straight up masterpiece that some argue that Enslaved have better, and fair enough. Eld is pretty damn awesome too. Oh, that should have been in my honorable mentions actually. Yeah, I forgot about that one. Eld is pretty damn amazing. Axioma, the new one, is honestly one of my absolute favorites by Enslaved. Spoilers for when I discography review them. But yeah, it's Frost by Enslaved. A Stone Cold classic from back in the day, and yeah, I had to get this shirt of the Norwegian mountains. Come on, that's so cool. But number 1 was an absolute no-brainer. It's barely even black metal, so you could argue it doesn't even count in this list. Demands by Agalloch. I have been listening to this album flat out for about a year now. When I first listened to it, it was about 7.5. Then I raised it to an 8. Then I raised it to a 9. And now it's a flat out 10 out of 10. Every single track is so beautiful and uplifting, but also crushingly sad. The acoustic guitar work is very simple, but absurdly effective. Most of these tracks are very repetitive and need a lot of patience, but once they sink your teeth into you, oh my god, do they sink their teeth into you. And The Shadow of Our Pale Companion is 15 minutes, but I wish it was longer. Odal is a very pretty instrumental. So was the Hawthorne Passage. I'm the Wooded Doors is the closest song to black metal on here. And it's a more traditional black metal, rather. That track is amazing. A Desolation Song is a very dark and depressing closer to the what am I even missing out? You're But a Ghost in My Arms is a track which admittedly goes too long for its own good, but it's awesome. And I'm trying to learn how to play it all the way through. The Great Cold Death of the Earth was the first Agalloch song I truly loved. The opening, The Celebration for the Death of Man, is a very short instrumental, which of course bleeds straight into the Shadow of the Pale Companion, which is a song I'm definitely doing an episode of Ben's favorites on, don't you worry. And yeah, this is an album I've had in constant rotation for about a year now. And like I said, it just keeps on growing and growing and growing and growing. And when I do my updated favorite albums of all time, you can bet that this is going to be number 11 or 12, maybe. Because it's Demented by Agalloch. Even though it's only 1 year older than me. It's another absolute classic alongside Frost and Blaze in the Northern Sky and... hell, some of the stuff in here. And yeah, I never tire of it. So, we've reached the end of the video. I would love to see your list of favorite black metal albums. Do 5, 10, 15, 20, I don't care. Keep on going. Scream at me for putting bands like Liturgy and Deafheaven and Whitewater and Dimmer and Cradle, all you like. And with all that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one.